Before there was evil, before the serpent, before the garden, there was him. Not a shadow, not a monster, not even a warning. He was light, dazzling, flawless, exalted. The ancients called him Helel ben Shachar, the morning star, a name once tied to the beauty of Venus rising before dawn. In Latin, that title became Lucifer, the Lightbringer, and in those early days it meant honor, not horror. He stood so close to the throne that music seemed to move through him. Some believed his very being radiated harmonies that kept heaven in balance. He didn't command with fear, he inspired with presence. Angels didn't follow because they had to, they followed because they wanted to. But perfection is fragile. It doesn't explode, it cracks. Sometimes with the question so small it sounds harmless. Why not me? And in that instant, light turned inward, and the universe's brightest voice began to sing a different song. He wasn't just in the light, he was made of it. His very name spoke of a cosmic role, the morning star, herald of the dawn. In ancient Canaanite myth, that title belonged to a celestial being who rose in brilliance but could never surpass the Most High. The prophet Isaiah used it to mock an arrogant earthly king, but later generations saw a deeper reflection, a being of heaven who dared to reach higher. Lucifer's form was poetry in motion. Scripture's rare descriptions hint at a body shimmering with sapphire, onyx, topaz, and gold, jewels that once adorned Eden itself. His armor wasn't forged of metal, but of glory, a living radiance that needed no sun to shine. His wings, vast and flawless, carried the scent of sanctity. Positioned near the throne itself, some traditions call him a covering cherub, not merely a guard, but a keeper of mysteries. Others say his station was higher still, a role now lost to time. And in the oldest Latin hymns, Lucifer was a title of honor for Christ himself, proof that the name wasn't born in evil, but in light. When he sang, the heavens resonated. Some believed music was woven into his essence, that his very existence was part of heaven's function. Angels didn't obey him out of fear. They trusted him because, in his presence, doubt simply didn't exist. For an age, he was the perfect example of power without arrogance, influence without corruption. It didn't begin with fire or fury, no clash of wings, no storm of swords, just a thought, small enough to hide inside a heartbeat. Why not me? Pride rarely arrives wearing its own name. It slips in quietly, disguised as logic, wrapped in the language of fairness. Lucifer didn't curse the throne, he questioned its monopoly. Why should eternity revolve around one will? Why shouldn't someone else, someone equally worthy, sit there? The ancient church fathers saw this moment as the birthplace of cosmic rebellion. Origen, in the 3rd century, linked Isaiah's morning star to this pride, a light turned against its source. Augustine, a century later, gave that pride a moral weight so heavy it bent heaven's order itself. In Jewish tradition, no angel had ever fallen before. There was no precedent, no scars in heaven's history to warn anyone what disobedience could cost. Lucifer still sang the songs, still stood by the throne, still looked every bit the perfect guardian. But his center of gravity had shifted. And the danger wasn't just in what he thought, it was in what he could make others think. Like a star that collapses into a black hole, his brilliance didn't fade, it bent inward, pulling at everything nearby. He didn't rise by force. He didn't need to. Lucifer's weapon was influence, and he wielded it like no one else could. He moved through the ranks of angels as wind moves through tall grass, unseen, unstoppable, leaving everything subtly bent in his wake. He didn't speak of hatred, he spoke of vision, a new order where freedom wasn't a gift from above, but a right claimed by the worthy. In the Islamic tradition, the figure of Azazel, a being of pure devotion, refused to bow to Adam, not out of malice, but out of pride in his own creation. The echo is unmistakable. Lucifer knew the desires of his kin, their quiet questions, their longing for purpose beyond endless obedience. He gave them an idea they didn't even know they wanted: choice. And choice, once tasted, is never forgotten. Scripture says a third of the host followed him, not because they were deceived, but because they believed him. He didn't twist their arms. He gave them a leader who looked like one of them, spoke like one of them, and dared what none of them had: to imagine heaven without the throne. The turning point came without speeches. Michael didn't step forward to debate. He stepped forward with a sword. Heaven had never known conflict, and now it knew war. Not a clash of mortals, but of beings forged in glory, their voices once woven together in song, now tearing the skies with battle cries.
Lucifer wasn't twisted in flesh. Not yet. The change began deeper. The music in him grew sharp, his light took on edges, and the same beauty that once steadied hearts now unnerved them. John Milton, in Paradise Lost, would imagine this moment as the ultimate betrayal, a general turning his army against its king. Dante, in the Divine Comedy, would later place Lucifer frozen in the lowest circle, his once proud wings now the source of a cold wind that freezes all hope. In the chaos, loyalty became visible. Some angels charged toward Michael's banner without hesitation. Others stood frozen between the throne's light and Lucifer's pull. And then there were those who followed their morning star into open defiance, not because they hated heaven, but because they loved him more than they feared the cost. The battle was not poetic, it was brutal. The sound of clashing weapons echoed through realms that had never known such noise. Light met light, and where it struck, it tore the very fabric of the heavens. And when the dust settled, the result was final. Pride had refused to bend and was broken. The final blow didn't just end a battle, it tore a path. Lucifer fell, not drifting like a leaf, but plummeting like lightning ripped from the clouds. Some traditions say the gates of heaven slammed behind him like iron bars on a prison cell. Others imagine his scream trailing fire across the void, his wings blackening as they burned. But he did not fall alone. A third of heaven's host, once radiant, now twisted, followed him into exile. Their forms reflected their choice, some monstrous, their glory warped into shapes meant to terrify. Others still beautiful, their allure masking the bitterness beneath. Lucifer's name was no longer the morning star. In Hebrew, he became Hasatan, the adversary, the accuser. In Arabic, Shaitan, the disturber of peace. His mission shifted. If he could not reign in heaven, he would make earth his stage. And when he moved again, it was not with an army. It was alone in a garden untouched by pain. The garden was a masterpiece. Every leaf reflected intention. Every breath was peace. Adam and Eve walked without shame, their souls untouched by fear. It was a realm with no concept of separation until he arrived. Lucifer did not storm the gates, he slipped in, not as a horned beast or winged terror, but as something clever, almost familiar. The Hebrew word describes a nakash, a serpent, but in ancient cultures, this could mean more than a snake. It could mean a shining being, intelligent, graceful, cloaked in subtle power. He did not roar, he whispered. One question, almost too simple to notice. Did God really say you couldn't? It wasn't an attack on truth, not directly. It was an invitation to doubt, and once doubt took root, desire followed. Desire for knowledge, for control, for more. Eve listened, Adam followed, and with one act, trust was fractured. It wasn't about the fruit, it was about what the fruit represented. A choice to believe themselves wiser than their maker. Shame came, innocence fled. And in the shadow of that first disobedience, Lucifer smiled. Not with triumph, but with satisfaction. He had rewritten the first chapter of human history. And heaven would never be as close again. Lucifer didn't need armies now. His victory in Eden proved something. Corruption was more efficient than conquest.
He began weaving threads of influence through human history, systems of greed, vanity, fear, and control that would grow on their own. In Mesopotamia, he took the shape of kings who claimed divinity. In Egypt, he hid in the cult of gods who promised immortality for a price. The Greeks gave him the tongue of silvered philosophy. The Romans gave him law without mercy. And in every age, he wore a different name, a different crown. But behind every mask, the same eyes, the same message. You don't need to serve. You can rule. Over centuries, he stopped offering destruction. Instead, he offered alternatives, false heavens, counterfeit truths, and humanity, again and again, chose them. After Eden, Lucifer had centuries of practice. He had watched kings kneel to false gods, nations spill blood for thrones, and prophets fall to pride. But now, his path crossed with someone unlike any he had faced before. The incarnate Word. Christ had just begun his earthly mission, baptized in the Jordan, chosen, led by the Spirit into the wilderness. 40 days without food, alone under a sky that knew no mercy. And it was there, in the silence between heartbeats, that Lucifer came. Not as a roaring enemy, not with the crack of thunder, but with words, precise, tempting, timed like the strike of a serpent. If you are the Son of God, turn these stones into bread. It wasn't hunger he aimed at, it was identity. When that failed, he offered something greater. All the kingdoms of the world, their glory laid out like jewels on velvet. No suffering, no cross, just power, the very thing Lucifer himself had reached for. And yet, Christ refused, not with arguments, but with truth. The Gospel says Lucifer left him until an opportune time. And when that time came, it wasn't in the desert, it was in the heart of one of Christ's own disciples. Judas didn't see himself as possessed, just justified.
Betrayal began with a whisper and ended with a kiss. Lucifer believed the cross was his victory, but in a twist older than creation itself, the cross became his humiliation. The Gospels say Christ died, but early Christian tradition says he descended into the realm of the dead, not as a prisoner, but as a conqueror. In the apocryphal Gospel of Nicodemus, the scene is almost cinematic. Hades, personification of the underworld, senses doom. Lucifer mocks him, certain that the cross means he has won. Then the gates shatter, chains break, and from the darkness rise Adam, Eve, David, the prophets, led out by Christ in triumph. Lucifer stands powerless, forced to watch as centuries of his captives walk free. It is not force that humiliates him, it is mercy. From that day, Lucifer's rivalry with Christ was not between equals. It never had been. It was the contrast of opposites. One sought to rise above God and fell. The other descended below all things and rose. For all his cunning, for all the ages spent bending history from the shadows, Lucifer's story was never going to end in triumph. Revelation leaves no room for ambiguity. After 1,000 years bound in the abyss, there comes a moment, not of mercy, not of second chances, but of final proof. The deceiver is released one last time, and instantly, he does what he has always done. Gathers the proud, the bitter, the blind. They march under the same illusion he has sold since Eden, that God can still be challenged. But there is no final war, no clash of equals. Before a single blow can be struck, fire falls from heaven. Not the fire of vengeance, but of finality. Lucifer is seized, not in combat, but by decree. The voice that once stirred rebellion across realms is silenced. The mind that warped truth is emptied of power. And then comes the sentence. The lake of fire, not his throne, not his kingdom, but his cell. Here he rules nothing. Here he whispers to no one. Here the morning star is erased from the sky forever. He becomes not a king, not a legend,
but a warning. A reminder that even the brightest can fall, and that pride, when it runs its full course, leaves nothing but ash.